we're live. Hey, everybody, we're live. We are live on YouTube, as well as in our Facebook group and on our Facebook page. You're listening to Prepper Talk Radio. For those of us just joining in, I am Scott, and as always, we got Shane in the house. How you doing, brother?
Good. We missed you guys.
Yeah,
we love doing the lives.
The lives are the best part.
They're better than recording. No doubt about that.
And we're on Wednesdays usually, but today we decided to throw a monkey wrench in and come in on Thursday.
Gotta mix it up.
Just gotta mix it up a little bit. But yeah. Utah Mike, hey, you're messing with me tonight. Sorry, buddy. We're doing Thursdays instead of Wednesdays. Everyone that's on the TikTok, you can hop over on YouTube and listen to the whole show. Shane and I are talking flooding preparedness today.
Are we on Facebook as well, Scott?
Yep, we're on Facebook as well. Okay. Just head over to Prepper Talk Radio, do a search over there, and you'll find us.
Oh, there we are. Yep, I see it.
But with all this snowfall, which has been insane, and it's not just affecting Utah. I mean, this is Idaho, Montana, Utah, Colorado, Wyoming, Nevada. There's flooding in Arizona, Northern California. I've got friends throwing reports in their areas where they've already had to evacuate certain areas because they're lower and because the water is going in the wrong places it shouldn't be going, right? They're dealing with those effects already. And I think we're going to hit the flooding last. But I don't know. I've been wrong a lot. That's just total prediction.
You have to look back to historical precedent. So I've been looking back to our big years for rain when I was younger was 83, 84, I think even 82. I mean, just really lots of snow those winters. Those are the winters you remember as a kid, walking in the snow up to here, the drifts are this high and you're building snow caves every day. And it was, just fantastic. You don't think about how difficult it really is to deal with that kind of snow, both in driving and shoveling on sidewalks and taking care of your neighbors and family and friends. It's when you get older like this, we've had enough. As a kid, bring it on, Right. So those years, 83 in particular, here in Utah, we had a huge snowstorm at the beginning of May that really set this all off up in the canyon. So if you know Utah at all, above Salt Lake City, got the ski resorts, a couple big canyons, Big and Little Cottonwood Canyon, Alta, Brighton, Snowbird, what's the other word? All these ski resorts and Park City on the other side. Anyway, lots of snow, big tall mountains, and after that big snowstorm in May, it became 70 degrees up at the ski resorts. And so it came down really quick. Doesn't look like we'll necessarily get that, but who knows? We might get more snow in May. The way how crazy it is right now.
Don't even
I
go
know,
there.
I hate to say it, but
I don't want snow next month.
Kind of have to, plan for worst case. Expect the unexpected is, I wouldn't say is my motto, but something I try to live by.
The rule to live by right now.
It's
crazy
for everything, not just snow, not just weather, but everything. Expect the unexpected. Prepare for the worst. Everything that's going on out there. We could get into that too, but and so
crazy. Oh, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, and so the flooding caused rivers down the middle of Salt Lake City, right down Main Street, and they had to sandbag everything. Now they fixed, everything since then is the way for drainage and runoff and everything. They've got basins and even in my neighborhood, we've got. I live at the base of a little canyon as well, and I've seen floods come down and heavy rains and mud or rock wash onto my own street. So I'm watching out for that, and they have improved. Catching runoff since then as well. So I'm pretty confident that we're safe where we're at, but still, what am I going to do to prepare just in case, we get flooded? We get
one of the toughest things is a lot of people don't carry flood insurance. And you got to remember, homeowners insurance does not cover for floods. So the problem people have
water coming in from outside of the house in particular,
right? It only covers from pipes breaking inside of the house, water inside the house from the origin of inside the house. But a flood from outside the house is not covered. You have to have a separate policy, and those are usually expensive, especially if you live in an area historically where the water table has been above the 100-year flood plain, right? Now, the interesting thing is you can go out and get a flood policy right now. But most policies have a 30, 60, or 90-day cooling period, meaning for that first 90 days, 30 days, 60 days, depending on your policy, you're not covered. And that's scary for a lot
Yeah.
of people.
Yeah.
That-
But also keep in mind that I understand that for most policies, even if you get a flood policy, that does not cover groundwater. So if you have a high water table, if you live in an area where maybe you have a your house is elevated out of the ground, so you can have a very high elevated basement, or you have a crawl space or whatever. When groundwater rises, and I see this happening in my own business, is high water table is creating osmotic pressure problems.
Yep.
But because the ground is getting saturated, we've here in Utah we've got the mountains and we've got the lakes. You've got Utah Lake and Salt Lake. The Great Salt Lake, those low-lying areas become saturated and water sits there, and then that can cause water problems in your house. So what I was getting at is that even the flood insurance problem will not cover high groundwater that seeps into your house. There may be exceptions, I don't know, but that's just what I understand.
Yikes. Well, here's a couple things that have happened so far in just the last little while. The Great Salt Lake has risen almost 2 feet.
Wow.
But it's still
really
2 feet. No, it's risen over a foot, but it's still 2 feet lower than it was this time a year ago.
Okay.
Which is insane. Now, the nice thing is they're expecting it to raise another 3 to 5 feet in the next few months. That's scary. That's a lot of water.
That's a lot of water.
That's a crap ton of water. And that has to come from somewhere. And one of the problems we have is a lot of the water that used to go to the Great Salt Lake has since been diverted. So it can go to Arizona, Nevada, California, and to the farmers. Those are all going to overflow. And that's why we're going to get so much water back into the Great Salt Lake. But man, there's going to be some areas that are going to be messed up. And wherever you live, like if you live near a creek, you guys got to start looking for those things. Right? You got to look, okay, what are the areas, or if I live in even a dry ravine, are those areas where we're going to have water? Wherever you live, whatever the snow tables are right now, you need to start thinking of those things.
Yeah, absolutely. Like if there's, like you say, if there's a dry ravine you've lived next to and you've never seen water in there, the ravine is there for a reason, right? It was created by water flow. So I would use those kinds of clues, wherever it might be. If there's a low-lying area that tends to puddle when it rains, I would expect that it'd be much worse if you have snowpacked runoff.
Oh yeah, that's the thing, is there's so much of no around you. You've got to start being proactive now.
Mm-hmm.
Like locally, they're telling us get sandbags, and the cities and the counties are providing sandbags and providing sand. So you go get those and fill them up, put them around the low areas in your yard, divert the water around those areas. Right. I'm fortunate. When we picked the house that we're in, I wanted to make sure that I wasn't in or around a low lying area, so we wouldn't have water runoff problems. We had flash floods a year and a half ago, where it went down the street next to ours, or the street that tees into ours, but we're about 50 feet up from that street where the water is flowing.
Mm-hmm.
But the little ravine below that, behind those homes, that sucker was just mud flow.
Yeah, the thing I would be concerned about at your place, Scott, is saturation of the ground and mudslides.
Yes.
What is your soil like up there? Is that a concern for you up there?
I'm not concerned about that, just because we are on, like, our foundation is actually on pylons.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So I'm not worried about that. Most of the houses in this area are on pylons, so they are down to the granite.
It's a pretty steep hillside area.
That's a steep hillside area. But the problem with that, though, is it doesn't take much to knock over pylon if everything around it's gone.
Mm-hmm.
So we could be screwed. It's going to be a fun fest for everybody. But here's the thing: make sure you've got your resources. So if I can't get out of my neighborhood for a couple of days, then I'll be okay. Or if they shut off water or power or anything else for a couple of days, then you'll be okay.
That's another big point to take into consideration is a lot of these floods. Sometimes floods can contaminate the culinary water system. and depending on where you live, your system, and then you'll be getting boil odors, right? So it definitely makes sense to have your water storage, have some filtration, be ready for that as well. To have issues with both sewage as well as fresh water,
right?
Which is crazy to think. But most of these water treatment plants, at least here in Utah, are obviously water tanks are up high and water treatment's down low, right? So you've got this natural gravity flow. Of course, there are exceptions. There are pump stations and such that handle those types of things. But if the ground is saturated at those low levels where the water treatment centers are, they're going to have an issue processing wastewater. So be prepared for anything at this point.
Oh man, yeah, be prepared for anything. We we're thankful that we have the preps that we have. We're thankful that we've planned the places that we can so far. But the other thing to think about is, like, this is just one factor of what could go wrong in the next few months, right? We also have the worries of what's going on economically, which are continuing to go on. That's not going to change. That's just going to get worse. Inflation's just going to continue to increase. But if you do have flooding in your area, that's going to cause a number of issues. I remember when I was in, I want to say 10th grade, I went down to see my cousins in southern Arizona in Tucson. And the prior year, they were telling me how they couldn't get out of their neighborhood for a week and a half because the washes had filled, overflowed, and knocked out all the roads. And they had to get to the grocery store that was in that neighborhood, could not get any new resources. Everything went to the grocery store. Everyone went to the grocery store, took all the food, and there was nothing left. So if you didn't have a pantry, if you didn't have extra stuff, you were gone. It was gone. Like, there was just nothing left for you. You had to wait till helicopters could bring stuff in.
Mm-hmm.
And then the cost of that was just through the roof.
Now, if you're prepared, that's a lot of fun, right? You're just camping out.
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't say it's a lot of fun, but it's in your wheelhouse.
For me, it'd be a lot of fun. So yeah, Mike's comment here is, if there's been a fire, so it is, vegetation is essential, obviously on hillsides. It directs the water into the ground, down into the aquifers, and without that, it just it'll saturate and it'll run off. So absolutely, mudslides are big concern for me. And, wherever I go, and I actually was when I drive to my property every other week or so, I'm always watching for avalanche. Drive through a couple of canyons, and I saw that the authorities initiated a couple of slides in Provo Canyon, where I drive regularly. So happy to see those happen, but unfortunately, that can't be done for mudslides. You just can't really anticipate it. I think we've all seen videos online of just mudslides just happening, other countries in particular, but pretty darn scary. You just don't know what, watch for signs of rockfall. If you see rockfall, that's your first signs, right? That's that the ground is softening and things are breaking apart. So I would say try to avoid those types of areas.
Spanish Fork Canyon had some pretty bad flooding last summer. And had they had fires in the last 5 years? Yes, they did.
Mm-hmm.
And then we had a huge downpour, and it pretty much washed out just mud and rock all over the top of the pass. And then it started coming down into Spanish Fork Canyon quite a bit. But what's interesting is we missed that storm by about 3 hours. We decided to stay in Price a little longer than we planned on for a little family vacation. But yeah, it was nuts. I mean, watching all the flooding there and how fast they were still able to clean up and get the roads opened again is a testament to the preparedness of the city and of the county and of the highway, right? Their infrastructure was set up very well. And they had so many backhoes out there clearing it off. But now look at things like California. Massive forest fires every year.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
Right? They don't do enough controlled burn and removal from year to year to keep it safer. And so they have these massive fires. And now this year, with all the water, that I worry more about like California, Northern California, even Southern California, than I do about us. I mean,
well, I think Mammoth had upwards of 870 inches, but Alta hit 877. Insane. We might hit 900 this year if things continue to go the way they've been going. If we get a big storm in May, man, 900. That's just inconceivable. That kind of snow, that kind of totals, just unbelievable.
What's funny is I got one of my friends on TikTok is off grid in Alaska. He just joined the live
Mhm.
over there. If you want to jump on the YouTube, there's a link in the bio. You can hop over there, guys. But and you can comment on the thread as we're going live. But he lives with this deepest snow every year. Like this is just like his
Yeah.
norm, right? And we're all the sissies, and we're really going to be
No
punished
doubt.
this year. But there's like I live up in Bountiful, Utah. We got in the last 4 days, we got 24, almost 25 inches where I live. Now today, if I go out and measure it, it's less than 15 inches because it's melting off that fast. It's crazy.
Yeah. Ground is absolutely saturated around at my house. Don't know where it's going. We have collapsible soils here, so it's an issue. I'm concerned about foundations and houses settling. Although, well, it's just happened before, but and that's one thing I think we need to we all like to think, wow, this is exceptional. This has never happened before, but it has. These things have happened before. It happened when I was a kid, and things are better since then. But the things that we haven't experienced, I think we should still be very wary about, and just instead of dismiss it and say, well, this is not a big deal. This has happened before. And I get that a lot. And when I mention it, we talk about these types of things. This is exceptional. This hasn't happened before. Most likely it has, but it's still best to be cautious and not say, oh, this has happened before. Nothing to worry about. No, I'm actually very, very much considering going get some sandbags and getting ready for anything. Although if I don't end up using them, then I got to get rid of them somehow. I got to get rid of the sand. I got to haul that away. It'd be a mess.
So one of the thoughts that I've had was this year, after all the flooding's over, is actually to do a redesign on my front yard because that's the uphill side.
Mm-hmm.
Some redesign on my front yard, diversions of water in case something ever does change. And also putting in a French drain closer to the house that'll run off into the backyard.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But I'm like, I don't want to put anything that's going to also put danger in the houses below me either. So
that's
got to be cognizant of all those things and look at, okay, where's the water going to go? That's going to be the safest place so that we don't mess anybody else.
Yeah. Here's a couple other thoughts I had is I one of my brother's houses, he's had some water problems in his basement this year. Mm-hmm. Just poorly planned communities. So if you've had a history of wet basement for big rainfall in the summer, I would go get a sump pump. I would go get if you don't already have one, go get a wet vac and be prepared, to pull back carpet, to tear up carpet and start drying things out. Maybe even have some fans ready. If you know you're going to experience, if you've experienced anything like this before, I would be ready with those types of things. Right now, some pumps are available. If it gets to the point where everybody needs them, you may not be able to get one. So I'm considering going and get one now just to have one.
Here's the trick: buy it off of Amazon if you can, because they have so many in stock and the prices are lower right now. If you don't need it, their return policy is so great, you can just send it back. You can hold on to it for a couple of months and send it back.
Good idea. I'm going to do search here.
Home Depot and Lowe's now have restricted return policies. So if you don't use it and you want to take it back, like after 60 days, you're screwed.
I was planning on going down to Harbor Freight because they have inexpensive ones. And so it wouldn't be a huge loss if I spent $100 and that pump sat there and I'd use it just for emergencies rather than spending $200 or more on something, and Harbor Freight, their tools are fine. I wouldn't use it in a full time application, especially for sump pump, but for temporary, absolutely.
Some of them I do.
Yeah.
Some of their stuff I will.
Some of the higher end stuff, more expensive stuff.
Well, some of it's complete knockoffs of Milwaukee products, which is funny to me.
Mm-hmm.
There's some like their automotive jack stands and stuff like that, complete knockoffs of some higher name brands. And so I've bought those. And I'm like, oh, this is sweet. This is great.
Mm-hmm.
But what's funny is like right now, everyone's got some time to go do stuff. Go do something to prep for the water issue. But like anything in prep, if you don't do something, if you don't take action now, you're going to be screwed potentially in a few months. and it's stuff that you could have avoided. And so at that point, whose fault is it? It's yours.
And you talk about going and getting insurance. That could be very costly. It could be less expensive to go get some sandbags and just put some effort and some time into that, rather than going paying for flood insurance, which may or may not kick into effect by the time you have
And that's why I brought up
an
the
event.
hold period, because the hold periods are going to kill any effectiveness of going and getting a flood insurance policy now. It's completely nullified by those timetables, because we're looking at flooding in the next 20 days is probably going to be the peak of it. After 20 days, it's going to start trickling back down.
Unless we get a cold spell and more snow, I guess, and more rain coming in. Yeah.
But yeah, it'll be the end of April that's kind of our peak. And then after that, it'll start slowing down probably mid-May. Well, actually, I can't even say that anymore because the snowpack is so high.
Yeah, exactly. Up in the high mountains, it's gonna be melting all year, all summer long. I think we're gonna have a lot of runoff all summer long. But yeah, flooding stages are definitely early in the year, April, May.
Funny is, we've got property up off of Duchesne River, and it's about 6 feet above the river, and I guarantee that's all going to be underwater.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That area will definitely flood all through Tabiona-Hannah, out that area. Mm-hmm. That will definitely flood. That does every high water table year, high runoff year.
And what's crazy is like they wanted us last year to go and clear some of the trees and debris, and I'm like, I didn't have time. Nobody has time, but it's just going to get washed away anyways, and we'll have other stuff probably washed up into that area now. Like we might have tons of firewood for next year that we'll be able to cut up this year. I don't know. It's going to be nuts. But one of the things that's amazing to me, and I'm trying to find the picture right now, is there was an image that Brighton posted, and they had a bunch of trucks lined up next to the snow to show just how deep the snow is.
Mm-hmm.
And we talked about this earlier. It's 21 feet at the base.
In base of Alta, is that correct? Where you have all the vehicles? Yeah.
Alta. Sorry, Alta.
Yeah. No, I've seen that picture as well. It's amazing. That is absolutely amazing.
If I can find it and share it on here.
So you're talking about, we're talking about flooding, and I like your title you put here on the podcast. This live stream just might turn into a flood. I think we're seeing. I know it's not just my thought. We are seeing floods everywhere. Call it a flood, call it a crisis, call it whatever you might call it. But a flood of currency being printed and flooded into our system, which is destroying the system. I mean, we're long past that. It's been destroyed for a long time, but we're seeing crisis in the dollar and inflation and banking, pretty much everything out there. It's kind of very symbolic to see this flooding, and preparing for flooding is very, I would say it's easier to, but it's easier to prepare for because you kind of know what's coming. When it comes to the dollar or collapse, financial collapse, okay, you see it coming, but when is it going to hit? When are the waters going to be here? How am I going to bail myself out? How am I going to pump? And so I think it's very symbolic and makes a lot of sense to me. Although, here in the West, we need the water. I mean, we need it really bad. I'm hoping Lake Powell fills up. I'm hoping Lake Mead fills up. I'm hoping the Great Salt Lake fills up. If you guys have been following that, the Great Salt Lake, if it dries out, that's a disaster. That's an ecological disaster. I mean, for all of us. I mean, just look at Powell and Mead for all the people down there that use that water. It's just terrible. And look at the lakes filling up in California. It's fantastic. I mean, the Oroville, I think, is almost completely full already when it was down to just a river going through there. It's excellent. So it's hard for me to balance in my mind the extremes, right? We'd like to be, I don't know. Some of us like roller coasters, right? I'm not too keen on roller coasters.
I'm not a fan anymore.
In my older age, I don't like the roller coasters. But anyway, I just think it's very fitting to talk about floods right now, being it's spring and everything else that's happening right now. I mean, I don't want to get to talking about Trump and all that crap that's going on, but that's a flood of chaos right there as well. And again, I do not want to talk.
Well, okay, so there's everything going on politically. there's everything going on monetarily, and what's funny to me is it's always called currency.
Mhm.
Current, right? Currency.
Mm,
It goes
mhm.
it goes in, it goes out, it goes up, it goes down, right?
Flowing.
It acts just like
Correct.
water. It flows. Um, and we're about to see some massive changes there. We're going to see in the areas of extra water this year, we're going to see a lot of changes here. Could be devastating for some people. I think it will be very devastating for some people. But when the currency collapse switches, when they switch the dial from paper fiat to digital fiat,
Mhm.
we're going to see massive failures across the board.
Yeah,
And it's going to affect every household.
and Utah Mike used the word arc, and I should have thought of that word because that's a perfect word as well. We are all building our own arcs. I mean, that's what I'm trying to do is build my own arc, not just for floating and stay above the water, but as a lifeboat in every aspect. So I think that's a perfect word to use there, Mike. Is creating our own arc, building our. I mean, our days are compared to the days of Noah.
Yep.
That the end of times is as to the days of Noah. So there's a lot of analogies we can use that way for both water as well as floods and sin and everything.
Well, there's a quote that says something along the lines of food storage today
Mm-hmm.
is as important as boarding the ark would have been in Noah's time.
Yeah.
I don't remember who said that.
Yeah, one of the prophets, one of the apostles or something.
Let's see here. But it was Jeff Benson, my cousin. The revelation to produce and store food may be as essential to our temporal welfare today
There you go.
as boarding the ark was to people in the days of Noah. Like, we've been doing this podcast for 6 years now, off and on, mostly. And the reason we started this podcast, originally it was radio. That's why it's Prepper Talk Radio. We did 3 years on radio, and the whole reason we reluctantly did this, because when you prep, you don't tell anybody you prep, right? The first rule of prepping is you don't talk about prepping. We blasted through those rules and are sharing everything we've learned and everything we know and bringing communities together to help people be better prepared. So we reluctantly joined in on all this, and have been sacrificing our time and energies to do this to help people get better prepared, because we believe in the importance of preparedness. We believe that everyone needs to be doing this. What is interesting, though, is how many deaf ears this falls on, and how many naysayers there are when you're like, hey, I'm getting prepared. And they're like, you don't need that. But yet when things do go sideways, they're the first people in line saying, well, hey, share with me.
Mm-hmm.
Share with me.
And it's just not deaf ears; it's the deniers, those who deny.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like with Noah and the ark. You know, there were all these people making fun of him for how many years did it take him to build the ark? 120 years, something like that.
100, yeah, it was 120 years.
And
to
so
build the ark.
Talk about patience, about building the ark. That's what we're doing. We're building our arks, and I get criticism. I guess if you don't talk about it, you don't get criticism, right?
Well, what's interesting is God told him to build it of gopher wood. What is gopher wood?
No idea.
It's not a type of tree. It's a type of treatment, which means to dry out and then to burn the exterior of.
Oh, okay.
To waterproof.
It's not going for wood. I'm the gopher for wood.
Yeah, it's not go get wood. Go for this. Go for that. And it's fascinating because when you dry out wood and then you use fire to seal the exterior of it, that outside edge gets very hard, and it becomes fireproof. It won't absorb water as well. There's so many things, like valuable things to that, but it's a slow process. So thinking about how many cubits long, how many cubits wide, how many cubits tall this thing was, and to do that to process all that wood, yeah, of course it's going to take 120 years to build all that, and then to have all the animals gathered in, and then remember, he didn't shut the door. The angel of the Lord came and shut the door and sealed him in. And I think how lucky, how blessed was he that he was sealed in, because I bet you anything he wanted to get out and help everyone that was trying to get in at the last minute. That had to be the hardest part. because he couldn't at that point help anybody, even though he'd been prophesying for over 150 years to prepare.
And another, of course, another water analogy as well is if someone's drowning, they're going to take you down. They're going to take you down with them, right? If you're not prepared with some kind of flotation device, being an excellent swimmer, know how to rescue, you're trained and so forth, you're going to drown as well. They're going to take you down. So if Noah were trying to bring more people onto the boat, they would just sink the boat. I mean, and they would take the resources up, and he wouldn't plan wouldn't have worked. So
it's funny, in emergency rescue, swimming merit badge, we actually had to do water rescues. It wasn't for the swimming merit badge. It was something in addition to
it. Was a life-saving merit badge, right?
It was a life-saving merit badge?
I think so, something like that.
But we had one kid was being a total jerk, and the instructor popped him in the face. And while the kid was stunned, he grabbed the kid, turned him around, and grabbed him and took him back in.
Mm-hmm.
And he was like, guys, I'm so glad he did that. And everyone's like, what? Like, why are you glad this kid got all pissed at you and you had to pop him in the face? Like, he's like, in a drowning situation, they're going to be groping at you, grabbing for you. They're not going to be thinking logically. And so they're going to be a danger to you.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, sometimes you have to pop them, smack them, knock them out, subdue them so that you can get you and them out of harm's way. But most importantly, you.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, man, how that applies to today, to us.
Yeah, absolutely.
Charger. Forgot to plug in. There we go. But yeah, it's nuts how, if you're watching the world right now and you're not seeing all the catastrophic things going on, if you're not seeing the political unrest, if you're not seeing, all these fake democracies all over the world failing and not waking up and saying, hey, we need to do something different, I don't know what else to say to help you.
Yeah, I think that's another great analogy too, is we can see by how much snowpack we have and how much water is in that snowpack that we're most definitely going to have flooding. Where and when is the big question. So we look at our economy, we look at the world, we look at everything that's going on. We look at the chaos going on in France and really all over the place. Is we can see these things building up. We can, if you don't want to, if you're not going to deny it, it'll be fine. This has happened before. Okay, yeah, maybe so, but you can still take all of those clues, all that information, and say, okay, this is what could happen. Again, worst case scenario, and prepare for that, because I really think we're on the verge of something big happening here. I felt that for the past couple of weeks. It really, once this banking system, started to collapse, and the effort that the Federal Reserve and governments are taking to prop up the systems right now has got to be immense. It's got to be just tremendous. And so if we're watching and not denying, we can see that flood that's going to come our way, and we can prepare for it. At least try and get out of the way, get to high ground first before that happens. And I think it's just another perfect analogy of the flooding situation we have right now.
I'm not a financial advisor, so this isn't investing advice or anything else, but I would say, like, if you've got minimum payments you can make on something for the next couple of months, make the minimum payments. Don't pay extra on those. Take that extra and put it towards food storage, purified water, right? Water filtration. You need that more than just water. Water filtration systems, alternative fuel systems, alternative methods for cooking. And if you guys have questions like what can I get, we've got a huge link in our link, as well as in the descriptions of most of our podcasts and most of our videos. You can go to our Amazon store, and we've got some things in there that we recommend. You don't have to buy it off Amazon, but there are some things in there that work really well. One of the things that I love, Kelly kettle. I love my Kelly kettle because I can take a pine cone, light that sucker up, put my Kelly kettle over it, and boil my water. Like that. It is the fastest method I've ever used to boil water. It's fantastic.
Other than a gas stove. Or
right.
even sometimes it works even better. Yeah.
Let me correct that. Off grid.
Yeah.
But even like I don't have a gas stove, but my electric stove, it's faster than my electric stove for boiling water. and that's the way the canister is designed. It's phenomenal. Looks like we got a family member in the chat down there. What's up, Cameron?
And hey, bro.
Yeah, floodhazards.utah.gov. We actually were going to show that. Let me see if I can pull that back up.
So you've got that all teed up, don't you, there, Scott?
Bounced off that for a second.
And I know this is obviously not applicable to everybody who's watching or listening, but most likely in your area, the state or county, or is going to have a resource for you there for flooding, for flood maps to find you whether you're in a flood zone, low-lying zone, 100-year, 500-year flood zones. And then just by looking at a topographic map, if you're not already familiar with the area where you live or where you're renting or whatever, that makes a lot of sense to say, hey, where's the low-lying zones? Where are the drainages coming off a hill or a mountain or wherever that will potentially flood? So yeah, there you go.
Yeah, so like look in your local area, find out, like this is our utah.gov website, floodhazards.utah.gov. And there's a section, I can't seem to remember exactly where to find it, but there is an interactive map on here. And I can't remember exactly where it is. Let's see if we've got this, if it's on here. Oh, wait, virtual exhibit. No, that's not it. But anyways, there's an actual section that shows you the average waterfall through each area of the canyons. And I saw a video on this the other day, and I was like, wow, that's phenomenal. And I've been trying to figure it out, and it just didn't work on my phone. So I'm trying to look at it here, but see maps. Nope. But yeah, there's resources locally. Find what works for you. Find like your local cities, your local counties. They might have free sandbags. If you're afraid there's going to be some floods coming up, they've already been thinking about it. They actually employ professionals to work on these projects year round to make sure that they can mitigate quickly to protect the roadways, to protect the electrical, the sewage, the water, the gas. Like they've got to protect all those infrastructures. And so that's what they're working on all the time. They've got people on staff that do this as like their full-time gig. And they're phenomenal. I live in the city of Bountiful, and they actually have emergency preparedness fairs every year. They have an email list that they send out. Hey, be aware of these issues, because we're right up against BLM land, forest land. And they're like, hey, be aware of these issues. We've got a heightened issue of fires this year. So be sure to go out and clean out any dead debris, any dead or rotting woods, clear all that off the property. And they let us know what we can be preparing for. And it's fantastic. Not all cities do that, but reach out to your city and see what resources they have, because there might be some free resources for you, and get those in place now before there's a problem.
And I would like to think that I can think of everything off the top of my head that may affect where I live, what I do. But that's not the case. I'm always watching YouTube videos, listening to other bloggers and preppers, and trying to learn and catch little clues and hints from everybody. So I think it makes perfect sense to look at the different resources and at least get some ideas of how to better prepare, even if it's one small little element. Another thing I wanted to make sure to bring up before we end this little live stream is that right now I am seeing just a lot of extremes. Everything is going to the extreme at this point in most cases, and I'm generalizing when I say everything is extreme. I really hate it when preppers say, when these channels say, oh man, everything is collapsing right now, or everything this and everything, then they're very much over exaggerating. So I definitely don't mean to over exaggerate, but the extremes are for me very noticeable, and not just extreme, but I think beyond extreme. We're going to the limits on everything that on many things, on financially, on our food sources, on all those important things. So I would challenge everyone to not be scared. First of all, not be scared, and get prepared, and look for those extremes, and just. And here, one thing I wanted to relate to you guys that has really helped me out recently, because I watch a lot of this stuff day in, day out, and I know you do too, Scott. I get depressed. I get
It's gloomy.
It's very gloomy, and I find myself at the end of the day just not happy, and I've got a frown on my face. I don't feel good. So one thing I've had to do that I've done made very personally is I have certain people that I've gotten to know well on YouTube and other channels. I watch their podcast, their video within it. I pick a certain time of the day, I watch it, and then I'm done, and I get away from that. Otherwise, it just drags me down into that extreme. If I'm constantly taking that in there all day long, and then I take a certain amount of time, a specific time, to where I watch uplifting stuff, like, and who knows, maybe it's kittens and puppies and raccoons, whatever, right? Stuff that makes me feel good and takes me out of that.
You need to come to my house and watch that with my kids.
But I'm sure that they probably watch a lot of
it's funny kitten videos every day now. It's insane.
Yeah. And it's stuff that's uplifting, and I think there's definitely a place for that. Good music that gets me out of it, and but to live in that world, I think, is not good, right? To live completely distracted all the time is not good. But again, to the other extreme, to live constantly looking for doom and gloom is also the other extreme that I have found is very detrimental to my happiness, my joy, and my family, and everyone around me as well. So to find that balance instead of going to extremes. So that's really I wanted to go with that comment is to try and be aware of the extremes, but try and avoid them. Touch them briefly and get away, right? Because for me, it's I wouldn't say I enjoy them, but I think it's called doom scrolling, right? As preppers, we tend to doom scroll because we want to look for what we want to hear, right? We're looking for what we want to hear. And that's not necessarily always the truth or what's good for us in our lives.
We're looking for what we want to hear. Let me clarify that a little more. We're looking for the conspiracy theories to be proven, right? We're looking to see what's actively going on in the world that's distracting us from what's really going on. We're like, we want to be aware of all the little things, all the bells and whistles that are happening, but we don't want to be overloaded by it. And that's why it's like, it's good to take a break. Like, there have been times in my life where I'm like 24-hour news cycle of all things disaster going on all the time. And I'm like studying it and I'm like learning it. And I'm like, and then I look back on that, usually it's like a 30 to 40 day cycle where I'll allow myself into that. I've been good at not doing that probably the last 3.5 years, but it was so consuming. You learn a lot. Part of the reason I think I do it so well is my ADHD gets exactly what it's looking for when I do that. Yeah. I get sucked right in, and I can hyper focus and fixate on it, and then I can then when it's over, it's like I won't look at it again for like 3 to 5 months. But what I found is the most beneficial is to focus my studies of what's coming and my awareness of what's coming in line with the scriptures. And if I can go back into Daniel and I can go back into Isaiah and I can go into Revelation and cross-reference those things, I'm like, oh, okay, it's going to get worse. That's okay. But it's going to get worse for everybody, but it's going to get really worse for the bad, for the wicked. And I try to focus my time on making sure that my relationship with God first is most vitally preserved. Yeah. That's the most important prep for my family, is to maintain my relationship with my Heavenly Father and with my Savior, Jesus Christ. Like, doing that first provides a lot of peace in my preparedness, right? And it goes back, like we talked about this before. Utah Mike even just put it up. Sleep through the storm. The story that goes along with that is there's a farmer's like, hey, I need to hire a hand to come help. And the guy's like, are you capable of everything? And he's going through the interview, and the guy goes, I can sleep when it storms. What does that mean? It means everything's taken care of before I go to bed. Well, when the storm did come, the farmer freaks out. He runs out to check, are all the shutters closed? Oh, yeah, they are. Are all the cattle where they need to be? Oh, yeah, they are. Are all the sheep? Are all the chickens? Is everything put away? It is. It's all put away. And he goes to find this guy, and the guy is sleeping. And he wakes him up, and he goes, yeah, I took care of everything so I could sleep. That's what we're trying to teach people to do now. That's what we're trying to help people understand is you do those things now and you do those things regularly, you can sleep through anything. It's like Jesus in the boat. in the ocean, and all the apostles are freaking out. They're like, "Aren't you worried we're gonna die?" And he's like, "Why are you waking me up? Don't you have any faith?
Mhm.
Why are you waking me up? I can sleep through the storm because I'm prepared." And then he turns around and does what's epic and just says,
Peace,
"Peace,
be still.
be still," which is what we need to be focusing on in our hearts, is that peace, finding that peace in the Savior, in our preparedness. He'll lead you down the right path you need to go to, because you can get sucked in and you can start freaking out and be like, "Oh no, the world's going to collapse. Everything's going." Okay,
Mhm.
but what are you learning from God in this process? Ask him what you need to focus on first, and he'll help direct you and guide you so that you don't waste time, and that you can put your resources, however limited they may be or however extravagant they may be, in the right place. That's the key. You do that and you're way better off.
Yeah, perfect advice, Scott.
Thank you. That's one of the things I've love about this podcast, being with you, Shane, and with Paris, is one of our things we've always wanted to do is always bring it back to understanding everything from God's perspective. We're human. We're feeble. We're weak. We have addictions. We have misunderstandings, misconceptions. We don't fully process most things that we come across, and so we have half truths in everything in our life. But the whole truth comes from God. The perfect wisdom comes from God. All knowledge comes from God. And what's amazing is he's created all the rocks and the trees and the birds and the bees and the flowers and the plants, and all of it for our benefit and use. And then the commandment to Adam stays the same for us. By the sweat of thy brow shalt thou work and feed all the days of thy life. Like, don't be lazy, guys. Go get prepared. Go do the work. You will love the results of getting prepared. You will love the peace that comes with it. You'll love the closeness that you get from God as you do those things and as you're obedient to him. It's not just about the commandments, right? And everyone thinks, 10 commandments. Dude, I'm all about the top 3. And people are like, what 3? There's 2. The 2 main commandments. I'm like, well, yeah, Jesus said there's 2 main commandments. Then he gave us a new one. Remember that? Love God first and foremost. And the 10 commandments are just the breakdown of what that means. But love God first and foremost. Second, love thy neighbor as yourself. And then third, this is one we always forget. Love everyone as I have loved them. Don't just love them as ourselves, but love one another as I have loved you, is what Jesus said. So we need to help them. We need to teach them. We need to make opportunities, create opportunities, and ask the Lord for those opportunities to help them get better prepared, to help them, see the content that we've been sharing, to meet the experts that we interview, to find the right books that help. My favorite prepping book is my scriptures. It's a compilation of books. But then after that, I've got a library of stuff. Like I've got bushcraft books. I've got Boy Scout books. They're just right here, always by my desk, right? They're great books to have. Find out from God where you should focus. Where should you focus? Switch your hobbies up. Align it with God, and you're gonna do better in whatever comes if you do that. And I can say that because he's carried me through my trials, and he will carry you through yours, because you are his too.
Amen, brother.
I want to thank everybody who's participated in tonight's live. We broadcast every week, usually on Wednesdays. Today we threw a monkey wrench in and did it Thursday. But for those of you guys who are new, those guys just started to listen. You've been listening to Prepper Talk Radio. Our trifecta, our focus is God, family, and country. Trust in God with all your heart, right mind, and strength. Do what you can to be prepared. And his grace, just like our sins, he'll wash away our sins, but he can wash away our unpreparedness too. He can carry us through it. My favorite story in the Bible, I shouldn't say that. I have so many favorites. One of my favorite stories in the Old Testament is when Elisha the prophet came to the widow, and she was preparing to make her last meal. She's like, I have just enough to feed my son and I, and then go die. And he said, no, make for me first. And she did. And she still feared. And she's like, what am I going to do? And he promised that oil and that wheat would never stop producing more until her trial was over. And it didn't. It kept producing.
They ate for many days.
They ate for many days. So trust in God, get prepared, and be awesome.
Thanks for joining us, guys.
You've been listening to the radio for the ready-minded, Prepper Talk Radio. Thank you for tuning in. We'll catch you on the next episode.